Breaking down God. That's like the biggest topic, isn't it? To break down the nature of God is kind of to break down the nature of reality itself. Like, what are we working with? Is God transcendent or immanent? Is it an intelligent, conscious being or more like a force? Is it a guy or a gal? Big questions. Based on my deep reflections and the evidence I've seen, and my immersion in some of the richest religious and esoteric mystery traditions of history, I've come to some answers that are satisfying for me at least, and line up very well with reality with nearly no cognitive dissonance that I can identify. One of the big concepts I've been reflecting on a lot lately is the Zimzum of Lurianic Kabbalah, as contrasted with the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light. The Or of Ein Sof is basically identical to the terms I throw around on this channel all the time from other traditions, like the non-dual light of Bardon, and the One of Platonism and Neoplatonism, and the Monad of Gnosticism, and loosely the Wuji of Taoism, or some would say the Tao, and to the Vedics and yogis, Brahman, or Atman. The New Agers call it Source. But it's not an implausible premise. It's just the idea of an infinite light that is so all-filling that there is no space for any other thing to exist, which is where more modern Kabbalistic and occult adaptations give the levels of Ein Sof the name the veils of negative existence, with Ein meaning not nothingness, but no thingness. What's to say about this conception of God? Nothing really. It's perfectly boring because it's perfectly full and complete. It's like buying a book and you open it and it's one page with a size 200 point font that reads "The End." Or even better, the page is just blank. Or even better, there is no book, just light and nothing else. Possibly, this infinitely boring Godhead, residing in infinite stillness and completeness, was inspired by its infinite boredom to create what the post-Luria Kabbalists call Zimzum, an act of contraction where the infinite all-filling light withdrew part of itself into itself, leaving an empty void no longer fully inhabited by light. Like I say all the time, creation is where emptiness meets fullness, and this is the premise of the Kabbalists as well. That when all light was withdrawn to allow for empty space, and then when a beam of light was reintroduced into this empty space, what the Kabbalists call the Kav, that light containing infinite fullness was fractured into various emanations to try to fill that empty space. Lao Tzu would say, the Tao gives birth to one, Wuji, the one gives birth to two, Taiji, the two gives birth to three, Sanbao, and three gives birth to 10,000 things, all embracing yin and yang, Taiji, duality. But to the Kabbalists, this Kav, this beam of light emanated into the emptiness created by the Zimzum, giving birth to time and space in the process, and gave birth to the four worlds of Atziluth, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. And in the process, the Kav was fragmented into the various Sephiroth of the Tree of Life, individual fragments embodying disparate fragments of the qualities of the Kav, and therefore the light of God, the Ein Sof Or. This is a really intuitive viewpoint. You ever notice that we literally exist in a world of darkness? Like you look up into the sky and you're literally looking into a seemingly infinite dark void of empty space? Yeah, that's the Zimzum. The infinite light of the Ein Sof was withdrawn, and that allowed enough space for there to be you and me, individual things. Lurianic Kabbalah goes on to talk about the shattering of the vessels, and more or less talks about how the divinity of all of the Sephiroth of Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya, that is, Hesed through Malkut, couldn't survive this act of creation and were essentially corrupted and adulterated. And that may not be exactly the same as the point that I try to make on my channel, but it's pretty damn close. My premise is that divinity didn't survive creation. That when this infinite light withdrew itself, leaving an empty space, and then reintroduced only part of itself back into that empty space, the fragmentation that occurred to that light caused it to be soiled and adulterated, resulting in a sort of corrupted pseudo-divinity. That's Lurianic Kabbalah's shattering of the vessels, Gnosticism's fall of Sophia, and what I'm saying, all kind of the same thing. It gave birth to the demiurge, a corrupted and fragmented pseudo-divinity bearing very little resemblance to the true, complete, and full divinity of non-dual light, the monad, Ein Sof, and etc. All of this is kind of important, because if creation is all that began when the light of God penetrated into darkness, that means to study our world is to study the demiurge, the creator God, the God of creation. And so I think the focus on the Zimzum is so important here, because it's a huge part of what allowed the demiurge to be. It's such a large part of what the demiurge is. It's emptiness, the emptiness that allows for time and space. The moment that emptiness was introduced, it meant that the entire fullness of divinity couldn't be expressed all at once in an atemporal way of full completeness. It had to be buffered through time and space, one piece at a time. We're talking about the light of infinite possibility being fed piecemeal into time and space. What does this give birth to? In my opinion, it gives birth to a very new God that is in many ways the opposite of the Ein Sof infinite light that gave birth to it. What we can say of the non-dual light of Ein Sof Or is that it's full in its infinite completeness. And so what we have in creation after the Zimzum is a God that is not complete, a God that is chasing completion through time and space like the Ouroboros chases its tail, attempting to expand cycles out into infinite possibility through time and space in a vain and never-ending effort to regain the completeness it lost. And when one has an experience of the One, a direct experience of non-dual light, there's really almost no words you can say about it, although practitioners have said that it feels extremely important, or put in other terms, extremely meaningful. So there's something about all possibilities and pieces being joined as an infinite whole, as one, that creates a palpable and intense meaningfulness. Back to the demiurge, it can't have this. It's the opposite. It chases meaning through time and space. If it can't have completeness, then somehow this absolute meaning, this ultimate reality, is just as elusive as the completeness itself. So what we have is a starving God, chasing completeness it will never attain because it seeks to encounter infinity through time and space. And so the unfolding of this infinity takes place in time and space, and therefore, in temporal terms, will attain this completeness in an infinite amount of time from now. That is to say, never. Its hunger, in my opinion, is most pronounced in the planetary sphere of Pluto. You can say hunger, but hunger is not far from desperation. And Pluto stands as one of the most core organs of this fragmented God of incompleteness and creation that tells you exactly what its agenda is. Desperately attempting transformation of the forms that ensnare consciousness in an attempt to create an outcome that makes everything complete and full. It's chasing its own tail, putting consciousness through cycles of forms, hoping that what comes out after enough revolutions through these cycles is transformed enough to be considered complete and meaningful. Some of its greatest tools are the positive and negative, benefics and malefics, that were bifurcated from that infinite light of Ein Sof Or. The demiurge, our creator God, realizes the transformative power of using negativity, harm, defilement, damage, reduction. In its desperation and hunger, it intentionally hurts its own children. More specifically, it breaks its own children. Wow, what a dick. But then it exercises the positive aspects of its being to restore and heal its own children. And now here's the really interesting part. That same person that existed before the damage and healing is not the same person that's there after the damage and healing. The exposure to negativity and positivity transformed the person. That's the Pluto of it, death and rebirth. But I think that's one of the big premises of my channel, is trying to get my viewers to find the demiurge that's inside of them. Have you bought into the idea that your soul is on an evolutionary journey and each lifetime teaches you lessons to become more divine? That is to say, do you think it's experiences that bring you closer to divinity, completeness, perfection, and the like? If so, your folly is the same as the demiurge's, and the demiurge is inside of you. So, Picatrix, after listing all the foul and undesirable aspects of Saturn that make up most of its nature, lists a few surprising benefits. He signifies secret sciences, secret meanings, and profound knowledge. And he rules profound sciences and the science of laws and seeking out the causes and roots of things and their effects, and speaking of wonders and understanding deep and secret qualities. William Lilly says that Saturn signifies miners, ditchers, farmers, those who handle corpses and dig holes to bury the dead. Actually, in so many ways, Saturn has to do with digging things up. Surrounding Jung's reflections on alchemy, we have the alchemical dictum, Instra quilinis invenitur. In filth it will be found. What does this mean? That which you most need to find will be found where you least wish to look. And this is eternally Saturn's station. It rules all filth and rot, and all the ugliness and darkness we'd rather not look upon. I think it's really important to engage with Saturn and this darkness and the negative current of creation, because instra quilinis invenitur. And in this filth, we can find the, quote, causes and roots of things and their effects. And problem solvers solve problems most completely by dealing with them at their root and understanding the root of things. Soul Trap YouTubers are talking about how they can prison break out of this prison planet and fly away to somewhere everything is all lollipops, rainbows, smiles, and sunshine. The error here is trying to treat the individual symptom, kind of like conventional Western medicine does, rather than understanding the root of problems as part of a holistic whole. You don't solve negativity. Creation is literally made of negativity and positivity. I'm not saying you can find the good things in life and the bad things. I'm saying that literally the substance of the entire created universe is negativity and positivity. Ein Sof is divine fullness. Zimzum is complete emptiness. When the Kav, originating from the Ein Sof, enters the complete emptiness of Zimzum, this allows for the first thing to exist. When infinite light fills all space, there are no things. And when all light is withdrawn, that is a vacuum with no things. Creation only becomes possible when everythingness enters into nothingness, when infinite light enters into absolute void. Okay, so this seems like metaphysical masturbation, but this is an extremely important point at the root of our experience. Creation itself is made of this positivity and negativity, the forms that take shape when light is only partial and fragmented as it passes into void. So this understanding flies in the face of so many false teachings. This new age idea of spiritual alchemy, of taking darkness and negativity and turning it into positivity, as if we're here to purify the entire universe of brokenness, darkness, and evil. Darkness is the foundation and backdrop of creation itself. Just look up in the sky, and it's the visible Zimzum. Evil is tied to separation. Note how the malefic planets, and malefics translated as evildoers, are described through all traditional sources as causing evils and unwanted things, but also causing separation and divorce. And the Zimzum itself causes the separation of the Kav, the light of creation. The evil is tied to the darkness that causes separation, which is the foundation of creation itself. And creation doesn't simply contain broken things. Creation is literally made up of brokenness. Brokenness of the infinite non-dual light is the only thing that allows for individual objects. Brokenness is fragmentation, and fragmentation and multiplicity is the necessary first step and first ingredient for creation to occur. So when you talk about solving these things by taking steps in creation to alchemize them, you're basically Sisyphus pushing his boulder as you whirl through infinite cycles of toil and undoing. Einstein said, you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. And that applies here, because to try to bring completion, fullness, and infinite positivity into creation is to try to work against what creation fundamentally is, which is brokenness and the dance of positivity and negativity. You can't unmake half of what creation is, because at that point it ceases to be created. And we have to ask, how did creation even come to be? Why did a zimzum occur, a withdrawal of infinite all-filling light allowing for a space of emptiness? You've really got to think. That's a decision that came from the ultimate level of the infinite God. There is nothing higher than the Ein Sof, the infinite light. That's the ultimate. And so to try to contend against creation and unmake it is to work against a current that comes from the highest level of the ultimate will of the ultimate level of God. So if we think downstream of this, that there is an unstoppable current towards creation, and the substance of creation is the dynamic shapes and scenes of the dance of positive and negative, the Kav and Zimzum, then the alchemical hero's effort in creation can't possibly be anything but Sisyphus pushing his boulder. We solve problems and make everything right again. But then the waves come and knock down our meticulously constructed sandcastles over and over. That's the story of the world, the rises and falls of nations. That's the story of life, the birth and death of mortal beings. That's the story of the gods. The benefics mend and repair what the malefics break, and then the malefics break what the benefics mend and repair. This is the design of creation itself. This is the unchangeable nature of what creation is. Creation itself is composed of positive and negative, and creation is an unstoppable thing. While it's impossible to stop creation, it is possible to stop observing creation. It is possible to return the observer to the infinite non-dual light that precedes creation. And this means to be uncreated. Critical to understand is that there exists techniques to accomplish this, but none of them include taking the hand of a spirit guide. There are no spirits or entities that represent the monad because the monad is an unknowable thing. We can see this as we proceed further out into the solar system, and therefore inward towards the innermost stratum of our being. If you decide to go beyond Saturn, you'll find Uranus, a planet that undoes every form of knowing and provides the exception to every rule. It gives aporia, as the ancient theurgists called it. The further you venture out, the more unknowable things become, and therefore the less there are things to say, and until there's nothing to say. Read that again. The further you venture out, the more unknowable things become, and therefore the less there are things to say until there's nothing to say. And that's the difference. The monad has nothing to say, but spirit guides have everything to say, because they want you to stay tangled up in stories and reincarnation. Creation is literally an unsolvable puzzle, an infinitely shifting challenge. Saturn, Satan, provides the adversary, and Uranus extends the Sudoku puzzle into the infinity, constantly shifting the structure of the board so that the game can continue into infinity. 12 signifies completion. Wow, that edit wasn't saved. But yeah, you can think of the 12 signs. You can think of the 12 hours of a clock, the 12 months, the 12 apostles, the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay? Now, the three outer planets are the stewards of infinite exploration towards the aim of transformation in a vain attempt to achieve completion in a setting where completion is impossible due to infinity passing through time and space. The four benefics and malefics provide the positive and negative that allow for a game and a story to take place as there is a fight for good things and an undoing of those good things, allowing for an infinite challenge. The four planets of experience are Earth, which corresponds to the physical body, the Moon, which corresponds to the astral body of emotions, Mercury, which corresponds to the mental body, and the Sun, which corresponds to the causal body and the Atman. And these things are the instruments of experience that allow for this infinite game or story to be experienced at these various levels of perception. Okay, I actually did write this part. I put it again later. 12 signifies completion. 12 signs. 12 months. 12 hours on the clock. 12 tribes of Israel. 12 apostles. Please note that 3 outer planets, plus 4 benefics and malefics, plus 4 experiential planets, gives us 11, the number of incompleteness and fragmentation. The nature of creation itself is 11. The Ouroboros chasing completeness infinitely through time and space and never reaching the finish line. And the 11 planets are the organs, the anatomy of creation itself.